Last little thing that I want to talk about. This is this little janky little situation I got going on. I wanted to talk about some neo-noir. This is one of my favorite genres of film. And I got five in particular that I'm going to put up. I'm going to try to do this relatively quickly, actually. These aren't ranked in any order, and they're not necessarily like my all-time favorites. Like I said, these aren't rankings. These are just five that I know are in like some of my favorites that I definitely like recommend for fans of the neo-noir genre. Now, so let me just go ahead and name them. Heat is just a classic. It's a classic. It's been a long time favorite of mine. Out of all these movies, I think maybe Heat has been like on my list the longest, like in terms of favorite movies and movies that I'm just kind of really into. Heat has been on the list the longest. Probably just the minute I saw it, that first viewing, I knew. And that's another thing I will say. Let me add that. Here's one of the things that I'll say all five of these movies share, is that all of them, upon first viewing, I knew, okay, this is going to be one of those movies that like I'm going to always like. It's going to always be like, quickly, when you ask me what are some of your favorite movies, these will quickly come to mind. All of these movies, after the very first viewing, I knew right away they're on the list, just some of my favorite movies. So they all kind of share that. But Heat was the first one out of these to kind of get on the list like that. Just a very just stylish, lots of mood, the moral ambiguity with the characters. Like the bad guys have good qualities and the good guys have bad qualities, and everything in between. It's a longer film, which makes it also kind of a great background movie once you know the movie inside and out. I've seen it so many times. I mean, I have it on DVD from back when buying DVDs was a thing and all that type of stuff. So just I've seen it every which way you can see it. So now it's a movie that I can easily put on and just let it play, and I can leave the room and come back an hour later and it's still playing, and because I know the movie inside and out, it's like I can re-engage with it just in bits and pieces and be fine with it. At this point it's a comfort film in a way, and there's nothing really else that needs to be said about the movie that hasn't already been said. All-star cast, all-star performances. I love the setting of the film, the actual mood of the film. It has this energy, and this is one of the things that kind of all, for me, neo-noir films seem to have, is just like everything really picks up after dark. Just kind of after dark, when most just, the 9-to-5ers and the teachers and just all that type of thing are all kind of getting ready for bed, going to sleep and stuff like that. You have these characters that are involved in these just after dark storylines of just kind of corruption and salacious activities and violence and mystery and espionage, just all these different things done in the shadow, half in the shadows, half in the light, the glowing city lights, the glow of the neon street lights, just all that type of stuff, the smoke, the blood, all of it. You know what I'm talking about with these type of films. And Heat really has all of that. Really, all of these movies have all of that. Moving on, Devil in a Blue Dress. This is the movie that out of all of these, I actually became a fan of the most recent. So I'm very late to the party on Devil in a Blue Dress. I've always been aware of it. It was always one of those like few Denzel films that I hadn't seen, and that's always what stood out about the movie to me. Was that it was like one of the few Denzel movies that I actually haven't seen, and I finally gave it a watch at one point, and it immediately became one of my favorite films. It's very heavy with the traditional old school film noir kind of aesthetic and storyline, and just the setting, all of those type of things. And just we have a very strong protagonist. The original protagonist, kind of to make a Tenet joke there, if you kind kind of get what I'm saying. But great protagonist in Denzel, so you're just very comfortable with who's kind of guiding you through this very kind of dangerous underbelly in this world, this environment that the movie takes place in. And again, has all the hallmarks of noir, with kind of everybody having a cloudy, shady sense of morality. Everybody has a little bit of dirt in their closet, even the good guys. Our protagonist in this film, played by Denzel Washington, he's very clearly our protagonist, and he's very clearly the person we're supposed to be rooting for. But he does do some things in this movie that are very kind of, socially unsavory. You know what I mean? There's a few kind of things he does early on in the movie, actually relatively early on in the movie, where it's like kind of like that's not a respectable choice that you made right there. But this is a whole world, this movie, meaning this movie, but I guess maybe real life too. But in this movie, this whole world is occupied by characters with shades of gray, and some of them clearly just being just truly evil. But like even our kind of positive characters have shades of gray to their morality and some of the choices they make. And it's just through and through just a great neo-noir viewing experience. There's a level of nostalgia within nostalgia with Devil in a Blue Dress, because it was made in 95. So as you're watching it now, there's a bit of nostalgia because you're watching something from the 90s, right? And then it's a 90s movie about, like, I think it's like the 50s or 60s or something like that. So it's kind of, I've talked about it in the past, the effect of nostalgia within nostalgia. You get like two layers of nostalgia in one viewing experience. So Devil in a Blue Dress, great film. And Dark City is the next movie. Fantastic viewing experience. The same situation where after the very first viewing, I knew this was going to be one of my favorites. Lots of mood. There's a dreamlike and a nightmare-like energy to this film. Just a very surreal, nightmarish situation, and it's a fun movie. It's a great October watch. It's a great kind of Halloween season watch. Just in the fall, in the autumn, it works really well during that time of year. I guess it works well all times of year, but particularly during the spooky season, it's kind of the perfect time for it. I won't go too much more into it, but people who have seen it, you know what it's about. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend checking out Dark City. Next up, we got, this is cliched. This is a cliche for this genre, because this is always so many YouTube video essays have been done about this, but I gotta be honest, because I like the movie Drive. This came out in 2011, I believe. Most people that like movies know about this movie to some degree, so I'm not gonna go into it too much. But I think the first time I watched it, I just really enjoyed it, and knew when it was over, I knew like, okay, this is one that's gonna be kind of on my list in the memory banks as kind of a viewing experience. I was really kind of right at my alley in terms of just the violence, the action, as well as kind of the almost tranquil nature to some of the moments in the movie. It kind of has so many of the elements that I like about noir films, so it's very easy for it to end up on this list. That's all I'll say about Drive. Next up, we have Basic Instinct. And Basic Instinct actually might be, I said Heat was, out of all five of these movies, Heat was the one that I had seen the longest ago. Basic Instinct might be right there with Heat. I can't really remember. Both of these movies that I bought on DVD back back in the day, of course. So it's kind of like very nostalgic, even just looking at the movie covers or the promo covers or whatever, thinking about the DVDs. But Basic Instinct, I know it's kind of at this point it's very much almost a meme. Countless skits and spoofs have been done, particularly about the whole Sharon Stone interrogation scene, which I will say, I love the movie, but that scene when I finally saw it is kind of overrated, to be honest. Like, I remember when I finally saw that interrogation scene, I was kind of like, that's all that we got going that's all that we got going on. But like, so it was kind of like, oh, I thought there was more going on by the whole like hype around the scene. And there was a lot of, I realized later on, there was a lot of things from like Hollywood, the 90s and 80s and even 70s films that have like this big reputation for being explicit or being super gory and disturbing or something. And then years later, I finally got to see the material, and I'm like, oh, that's all? Like, that's what everybody was up in arms about? So that interrogation scene, it's a fun little scene in the movie. It's not a bad scene. But I remember as like a youngster, when I finally saw the scene, after hearing all the hype and seeing all the spoofs and stuff, when I finally saw the scene, I was kind of like, oh, it's a bit tamer than I was expecting. But Basic Instinct has a lot of classic noir elements, particularly the whole vixen, dangerous vixen that Sharon Stone portrays. You have Michael Douglas as the detective who just has a lot of dirt on him. Loves his drink, loves his smoke, and loves his women, and seems to love getting into trouble. Just that kind of detective. So just Dirty Deeds After Dark. It's a very salacious, blatantly sexual movie. That's kind of what the movie got kind of most infamous for, was the kind of the sexuality of the film, the mix of sexuality and violence. So it has all that going for it. And again, shares all of the same kind of key elements of the genre as the other 4 movies, and that's why all 5 of them are some of my favorite neo-noir films out there. So I do recommend these to anybody who's a fan of the neo-noir genre. But if you're a fan of that genre, chances are you've probably already seen most of these movies anyway. So again, this is kind of like just an excuse for me to say, hey, here's 5 movies that I really like. That's pretty much what's going on here. Let me be honest, right? So that's the video. I'm gonna cut it here. Again, kind of a little first, like,